Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we're blessed to have Dr. Hardt with us. Dr. Hardt, thanks so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be with you. It's always a delight to talk with you, and I know it's an opportunity to share with many other people.
Absolutely. And we're getting great feedback on your insights. But I did get one question that came through, and the question said, what's the deal with the yellow and blue? So how would you describe that, Dr. Hardt?
Oh, well, that's very fun. Well, Biocybernaut has colors. It's our blue and yellow are the colors for Biocybernaut. Also, by the way, happens to be the colors of the Swedish national flag. One of our members, appreciates that really much because he's of Swedish origin. But blue and yellow, there's many dimensions to the answer. Blue and yellow are opponent colors. The only two other colors that do this are red and green. And sometimes when people come to Biocybernaut and they look around and they see these intense, deep, vivid blues with lines between, like, the baseboards might be yellow and the walls blue. The table is yellow and the carpet is blue. And so everywhere people look, they have the opportunity to see blue and yellow boundaries. Now, one of the demonstrations that we give them is we take a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, which is vivid blue on one side and vivid yellow on the other. And we turn the lights way up and we ask them to stare for 2 minutes at the middle of the paper, which is a boundary between blue and yellow. And they do that. And then we say, okay, now flip it over. It's white on the other side. And they go, wow, because what was yellow now shows up as blue, and what was blue now shows up as yellow. And so also what people notice is when they're staring at that line, because of the circadic movement of the eye, this is why humans have persistence of vision. When we digress a little. For example, experiments were done with frogs, where they measured the activity coming up the optic nerve from the eye. So the frog is sitting there and a bug comes in and the frog's eye is firing. Then the bug lands out of reach of the frog. Otherwise we'd have a quick end to the story. And then the bug disappears. The frog's eye stops seeing because it's no longer moving. And the same thing would happen to human eyes, human vision, except that our eyes jitter. And so whatever's coming in is falling on different retinal cells. Now this jitter is electronically subtracted as the signals go up the nervous system, so the world doesn't appear to be jittering. But in fact, our eyes jitter, and the movements are called circadic movements. And so as you're staring, you think fixedly at this line separating the blue and the yellow, the eye is jittering. And so cells that have been retinal cells, the cones that have been saturated with blue, will flare in yellow. And on the other side of the line, the ones that have been saturated with yellow will flare in blue. Well, it turns out that blue has incredible healing qualities. It's not a blue that can be produced with any pigment. It can be produced only within our nervous system. And, I could tell stories of personal healings that I've had because of blue light. But instead of, going too far off into woo land, let's just note that for decades, psychiatrists and psychologists have known to paint their waiting rooms blue because blue has a calming, soothing effect. And many times the patients going for psychiatric or psychological counseling have a problem with anxiety. The top 5 anti-anxiety drugs back in the 80s were grossing $500 million. So anxiety is really a serious problem. Fortunately, alpha is like a silver bullet against anxiety, but that's a different story. We're on the topic of color. So blue has a calming effect. But beyond that, some of the blues at Biocybernaut are so vivid and so deep that the human eye cannot focus on them exactly. As you know, we can see, if you're not colorblind, you can see from red all the way up to violet. Can't see infrared, you can't see ultraviolet, but everything in between. But the blue waves, the wavelengths are so short, the frequency is so high that the human eye cannot fully focus on the really intense blues. And so what this does is it takes people unconsciously a little bit out of their comfort zone. Our eyes send our brain 10 times more information per second than our ears do. In dolphins, it's reversed. Dolphins see with their sonar, so they see with their ears. But our eyes send 10 times more information per second to our brain. And the visual cortex is large relative to the auditory cortex because there's more brain cells to do more processing of the more information. Okay, so, but because of this, a lot of people constitute their reality principally out of what they see. In fact, one of the common expressions when you explain something to someone, they go, "Oh, I see. I see." Not I hear or I feel, I see. And that implies that they got it, understanding. Well, one time I had in training a woman who kind of carried this to the extreme. It was all like, "I see, I see." And she had tremendous tension in her forehead. In those days, it was in the university. We would have EMG, muscle detecting electrodes on the forehead. Tension was off the charts. And so on day 5 of her training, there were 3 other people in the training, and she's in the canopy room debriefing, and she'd had a fantastic breakthrough. Just after she had popped. And so I was, of course, exploring, digging, like I wanted her to be able to talk more about what she had, her breakthrough. And she said, "Oh, it was easy. I went away from my eyes." And the other people in the training looked like, "Oh, went away from your eyes?" Well, but I understood because her entire way of knowing was, "I see." So for her to go away from that and open up into a larger form of knowingness, more oneness, for her, to put it in language, she went away from her eyes. And so by having these deep, vivid blue walls, it takes people out of the comfortable knowing of their visual sense, because you cannot fully focus the blue light with the lens of your eye. And so we have, now you'll notice that I'm wearing a blue tie and a yellow shirt. Our logo behind me is blue and yellow. So if I'm sitting across the table from trainees, talking with them or listening to them, they're looking at me and they are seeing a blue and yellow boundary. And so because of the circadic movement of the eyes, there is being produced in their visual system this amazing healing blue. I'll give you like a personal example. As a child in 3rd grade, I had rheumatic fever. Third day that I came home from school complaining that my ankles ached, my mother rushed me to the doctor and I had a blood test, sedimentation test, and it was positive for rheumatic fever. She knew this because one of her nephews had had similar ankle problems and it wasn't diagnosed for months. So I spent the next month flat on my back in a hospital and the next 3 months at home in bed. There was the only treatment. Was complete bed rest. And so after 4 months on my back in 3rd grade, I missed 3rd grade entirely, I had to learn to walk again. Most people don't remember learning to walk, but I'm a 3rd grader and my mother is holding my hands and helping me walk for the first time to the bathroom. So that was, something that I consciously remember. Now, I didn't have a heart murmur, but I did have a situation with my heart where if I did not get at least 10 hours of sleep, the QRS complex of the EKG would shrink down in amplitude and it would be smaller than the following T wave. Well, the QRS complex is where the heart muscle contracts and shoots the blood out through the body. Then the T wave is where it refills. And so if I didn't have 10 hours of sleep or more, my QRS complex would shrink down smaller than the T wave. And I would, of course, be without energy. And so one time, and there would sometimes be pain. This is now as a young adult. And so I was with my first Celtic teacher and I was driving him somewhere and I was having heart pains. I hadn't had enough sleep. And And he was visibly in pain. He goes, well, what's wrong? I said, oh, Brian, it's my heart. And he said, well, would you like me to fix it? And I go, well, sure. And so he said, okay, well, now I'll put blue light around it. And I've never had that problem since. And as you know, I sometimes go 36 hours without sleeping. And, at one point when I was opening our training center, which we had for 1 year in Raleigh, North Carolina, I drove across the country from San Francisco to Raleigh, North Carolina in 2.5 days. I had my technician was riding with me. We took turns sleeping in the back of the van, sleeping and driving. We never shut the engine off. And so 2.5 days of wakefulness with little naps. So I personally am an example of healing with blue light. At one point, when I was in Canada, I had a surgery, and I was out on the deck of my home and training center in Minchosen, a rural part of Victoria, British Columbia, and it was spring. And so one of my trainers brought me a bunch of yellow tulips. And so I lay on the deck chair looking up at the pristine blue sky, holding the tulips up and looking at the boundary between the yellow tulip and the blue sky. And that blue light flared, of course, and I directed it to where I needed healing, and the healing was very fast. So there's unconscious healing that goes on just by being in a Biocybernaut Center. This is something we don't often talk about, but we find that Kate has been receiving questions from people interested in doing the training, and they wonder, what's with blue and yellow? Okay, well, there's very little at Biocybernaut that's accidental. There's deep science behind almost everything we do, including the temperature that we keep the chambers, the colors that we have on the walls, and even the colors of the staff. And so you will be hard pressed to find any red, pink, or orange in a Biocybernaut building. These are colors. Red is great for, shall we say, a bedroom, a boudoir, a house of ill repute might have red satin sheets, but red is a passionate color. But if we're going for higher consciousness, we want to have color. We basically cut the spectrum at yellow, and everything bluewards of yellow, which is blue and green and teal and blue and indigo and violet. All of those are welcome in a Biocybernaut Center, which is about the higher chakras.
Absolutely fascinating as always, Dr. Hardt. Thank you so much for enlightening us.
Delightful to share. This is something I don't often get a chance to talk about. So,
well, I'm sure we'll get lots of questions. We'll go a little deeper as well. As always, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. It's fun to hang out with you.
Always.
Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. Listen, if you are looking to improve your brain, your psyche, your ability, your emotions, your ability to really maximize your performance, and you want to really dig into your brain, my dear friend, Dr. Jim Hardt, and his Biocybernaut program is extraordinary. I've been through it myself. My wife Sage has, members of my family have, and we found it to be truly extraordinary. But it is not for the faint at heart. Unless you're dead serious about really taking things to the next level, don't bother. We went through the Alpha program designed to maximize your ability to create alpha waves. And it was challenging and it was incredibly rewarding. And I'd recommend it to anybody serious about improving the quality of their lives or including the quality of their family lives as well. So check out Cybernaut, check out Dr. Jim Hardt. And if you do, I think you'll be really, really pleased. And the entire time you are learning to think and how you think these electrodes create sounds. And you learn how to put yourself in the zone of alpha. But it's a bitch. It's horrible. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that wants easy experiences, but I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to grow immensely. And by the first day, I'm like, who do I got to shoot to get out of this thing? Oh, it's me. I'm the one that did this shit, right? But by the end of the week, all three of us were able to go into this state of alpha. And if you're familiar with alpha, the best way I can describe alpha is there's no problem that can't be solved in alpha. Because every problem that we have was created by us.
Thank you for being here and absorbing this information about the science of brainwaves and about the stories of people whose lives have been beneficially altered, improved by doing brainwave training at Biocybernaut. And now I'm reaching out to you to invite you to come and be a part of the Biocybernaut adventure. Biocybernauts are to inner space what astronauts are to outer space. So come and adventure with us. And if you'd like to leave a comment on the videos, you can do that, or there's a link you can click if you'd like to learn more. We welcome you to Biocybernaut.